Iran and the US have agreed to a 2-week ceasefire, and President Donald Trump says that he is suspending bombing of Iran for 2 weeks.
Well, the condition is that Tehran completely reopens the Strait of Hormuz. Well, the 2-week period would be used to negotiate a larger agreement to potentially end the war. And Trump says it is a double-sided ceasefire.
Iran has also agreed to the pause. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has confirmed that Iran will halt attacks if attacks against Iran are stopped. He said that safe transit in the Strait of Hormuz will be possible for 2 weeks via coordination with Iranian armed forces.
According to a White House official, Israel has also agreed to the ceasefire and will also suspend its strikes. The same official said the ceasefire will come into force when Iran opens the Strait of Hormuz. However, the US military has already paused strikes inside Iran.
Earlier, US President Donald Trump took to his Truth Social platform to announce the 2-week pause. The post came just an hour before his deadline to start catastrophic attacks against Iran.
In his post, Trump added that they are very far along with the definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. He said that US has received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believes it is a workable basis on which to negotiate further. The US president claimed that almost all of the various points of past contentions have been agreed to between the United States and Iran. But a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. The announcement came after Pakistan made a last-minute proposal to avert massive US attacks on Iran.
Iran has said negotiations with US will be held in Islamabad to finalize details. Iran says that talks will begin on Friday, 10th of April, and may be extended if both sides agree.
Iran says 10-point proposal included controlled transit through the Strait of Hormuz, coordinated with Iranian armed forces, ending war against Iran and allied groups, withdrawal of US combat forces from all regional bases.
Iran says talks with US do not mean an end of the war. Iran says that it will only accept war's conclusion once the details are finalized in line with the 10-point plan. All right, for more on this, we're now being joined live by Greg Swenson from Washington, D.C. He's an international affairs expert. Mr. Swenson, thanks so much for making time. Great news, of course, a 2-week ceasefire. No one can complain about that. It's on the verge of catastrophic strikes or perhaps another delay. But before we could see any of that, we're seeing a ceasefire being announced, a double-sided ceasefire. The 10-point plan is very much in focus. This is the Iranian 10-point plan, not the U.S. 15-point plan. Do you feel this ceasefire has largely been achieved on what Iran wants?
No, I don't. And I think Iran was in a position of complete weakness. So I'm not sure that they are dictating anything now. And I'm very suspicious of this whole arrangement. I mean, it's good news. Don't get me wrong. I think it's good that there's been a ceasefire. I hope that it works. I hope that negotiations and diplomacy can work. But this is the regime of Iran, and they cannot be trusted. So I think there's got to be a lot of work done in the next 2 weeks.
Right, Mr. Spencer, and having said that, critics also argue that somewhere in the course of this conflict, US actually ended up handing Iran an advantage that it did not have with the Strait of Hormuz. And it does control a certain strategic leverage here, which has also made it a little difficult for Trump to now downplay the threat from Iran. How do you see that contradiction playing out going forward? Because now the market pressures are also, mounting and compounding. And within the administration itself, there is a lot of pressure to de-escalate. And it cannot happen without Iran also reciprocating, this backtracking here.
Well, yeah, there's the easy way and the hard way. And the easy way is for the mullahs, the regime, to open up the strait and not make a fight out of it. The hard way would be for the U.S. Navy to come in and clear out the strait. And I think there'd be more death and destruction and a lot of drama between now and the point where the strait is open. So, this is the easy way to do it. I think that the regime realizes that the alternative would be a lot more destruction in their country. Now, I'm not sure they care about that because they were putting human shields up to surround their power structures and their infrastructure in Iran just in the last 24 hours. So I think in many ways, the president's bluster over the last day actually worked because it drew the regime to the negotiating table. Either way, the strait would be opened up. It's just, again, the easy way or the hard way.
Mr. Swenson, regarding the strait, let me quickly just round up what came from the White House a week ago, that opening up the Strait of Hormuz is not a war objective. Donald Trump, sitting in the Oval Office, also mentioned that we're out of here. Anyone who needs oil, go and fetch it. We've done the hard part. Just a little over 24 hours ago, Donald Trump was asked by a journalist, and he said the Strait of Hormuz remains a top priority for us. So it was very clear. And of course, the oil prices in the US have also gone up. So it's clear that the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz affects the US, and they could not have exited here without opening it up. Let me now cut across to just a small excerpt from this post from Donald Trump acknowledging the ceasefire. He said, I'm agreeing to the complete, immediate and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz. I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. So the Strait of Hormuz is what brought them to this conclusion of a ceasefire. I'm talking about the Americans here. They've achieved a ceasefire by agreeing to, after Iran agreed to open up a Strait of Hormuz, and this is a problem that never existed before the war actually began. So I again ask you, do you feel this is a ceasefire achieved on Iran's terms?
No, absolutely not. This is a ceasefire on the US's terms because we were destroying the military capabilities of the regime, and it would have been even more dramatic if they had not reached some sort of agreement by 8 o'clock Eastern time tonight, which they did. So, yeah, is the opening of the strait a good thing? Of course it is. Does it really affect the U.S. that much? Yeah, indirectly with oil prices higher. But the U.S. is completely independent in terms of energy, and natural gas prices, because they're done regionally, have not really increased dramatically in the U.S. So, I mean, this is something where I think the president is doing the best thing for the world, for the global economy. He's doing the best thing for our allies, especially in Europe and Asia, that are dependent on oil that comes through the strait. But I think he's correct to say in your earlier comment that it's not the top priority. The top priority was dismantling the nuclear capabilities of the regime, stopping their ballistic missile program, and ceasing the funding of their terrorist proxies in the region. So, military accomplishments have been met. Now it's time to move on to economics. And by the way, as we all know, the president believes in markets. He believes in making money, not war. So if this is an acceptable conclusion to at least this phase of the conflict, yeah, great. We're all good with that. And I think if we can provide more energy, lower energy prices for the world, all the better. But that is very much on U.S. terms, not on the regime's terms.
We hear you, Mr. Swenson, and now what the mediation effort by Pakistan has done is it's given both the sides, a chance to de-escalate. And this is, of course, after the rhetoric reached a very existential point where U.S. has made threats of sending Iran back to the Stone Ages and wiping out an entire civilization. And based on what you've said, apparently the threats have worked in a way, but at the same time, it leads us to the question, if this 2-week window does not lead to a definitive breakthrough, a meaningful breakthrough, what do you think the trajectory is going to look like from here on?
Well, I think it will be going back to, deliberately striking the regime in Iran and making sure they have no capabilities of threatening their neighbors or the world. And so, look, the last night was the greatest number of bombing campaigns since the start of this conflict. That was only last night. So the U.S. military will not let up. So if this 2-week ceasefire does not work out, if there's not some serious negotiations from the regime, we'll go back to doing what we do really well, which is absolutely punishing the regime in Iran. So far, so good. The military accomplishments, as we've discussed tonight, have been accomplished. for the most part, but that doesn't mean 100%. And so, and we even saw that last Friday where, some, shoulder-fired heat-seeking missile was able to take down an American jet. Those things will happen, but for the most part, the military accomplishments have been made. Now the question is, can we get to some sort of peace agreement? I'm not very confident in this. I hope it works. I really do. But I think that, the only thing that the mullahs understand, that the regime understands, is power. And we have demonstrated that we will win if it's a power struggle. If the strait is open, that's great for markets right now. But if that doesn't happen in 2 weeks, we'll just have to come back and finish the job.
Right, Mr. Swenson, I don't think I fully agree with everything you say, but then, of course, that's your perspective, and we respect that. But as far as the war is concerned, or doing the world a favor, well, solving a problem which never existed before, the war was started unilaterally without informing the Congress or any of the allies, and then solving it, calling it a favor to the world, it's a different perspective. We'll leave that as an American perspective. But as of now, there's some breaking news regarding the oil markets. Let's go to that, and then we'll come back.